Writing an outbound sequence is not easy. You need all the steps to cohesively work together towards one goal, getting the prospect to respond. In this course, I'm going to share everything I know about how to create an effective outbound sequence from scratch using email, LinkedIn, and the phone, so you can consistently turn cold leads to opportunities. Hey, my name is Jed Mahrle, head of outbound sales at Mailshake and creator of the Practical Prospecting newsletter. I've been obsessively testing sequence frameworks for the last 3 years, and what I'm going to share today has been the most effective for me. It's what I used to become a top SDR, sourcing over $700,000 in revenue in 1 year, and eventually using these same frameworks to scale an SDR team from 3 to 15 plus, helping that company reach $1 billion valuation. My philosophy for sequences is simple. I'm looking to get a yes or no as soon as possible. If I get a yes, obviously goal achieved. If I get a no, it's far better than the prospect never responding to me and me having to waste my time with endless follow-ups. With a no, at least I know where the prospect is at, so I can have a more personalized follow-up strategy. I'm going to outline everything from my personal sequence framework, including the number of steps, what type of steps, the length, the email messaging frameworks I use, including bump emails and subject lines, and far more.
But I know you want more.
By the end of this course, you'll know how to create an effective outbound sequence from scratch in a matter of 1 or 2 hours. Now let's get started. The first step to creating a sequence is the research. Here's what you need to know before creating any sequence. Number 1 is your target persona. You should only target one persona per sequence because you want to keep the messaging focused. Number 2 is their top 1 to 3 pain points that you solve, ideally in the prospect's own language. And number 3, any case studies or resources you have to support how you solve these problems. So framing your sequence around the right problems is the most important part of your sequence. It's the foundation of everything else you'll do. So if there's any part you should take extra time on, it should be this. So here are some ideas to make sure you're finding the right problems. Number 1, read your G2 crowd reviews and case studies. Number 2, listen to call recordings of customers. Number 3, talk internally to your account management and CSM team to see what they're hearing from customers. And number 4, this is my favorite, actually interview your customers and ask them about the problems they're running into and how your product solves that problem. Next, we want to find some marketing resources that help support these problems that we solve. So for example, my company Mailshake is a sales engagement software. So what I did is I found our cold email playbook and I put that into our sequences as a resource. I also grabbed some case studies and additional resources from our website. But what you want to do is gather all of them ahead of time so that you have these resources in one place once you start to build the sequence. Now that we have the theme of our sequence and the problems that we're looking to talk about and the resources to support it, let's get into actually building the content. Now that you have the theme of your sequence and resources compiled, it's time to use them to craft your email messaging. These are the 2 types of emails I use in my sequences: value emails and bump emails. Value emails are the first email in a new thread. They're typically the ones you would spend time personalizing and not automating. And they should focus on one problem you solve from the list we gathered earlier. Now, the biggest mistake I see here is people tend to put all of their eggs in one basket in this email. And so what I mean is they'll share all the problems or all the features they have in that first email. And the problem is, if you do this, you have nothing else to share in your follow-up emails. You'll sound super redundant. And so instead, write short emails that focus on one problem using this framework. Subject line: create curiosity by distilling the problem into 1 to 3 words. Make it intentionally boring so it looks more like an internal email and not like a marketing email. And lastly, make it lowercase because for the same reason, it looks a little more casual, it looks more like an internal email. An example of this for my company Mailshake would be low reply rates. Now onto the first line of the email, which should focus on the context of why you're reaching out. So for example, as a VP of sales, do you ever run into insert problem? Next, the second line of your email should focus on your value proposition, and it should have social proof to support it, again, from those resources we gathered earlier. So for example, you could say, recently helped customer, social proof, solve this with explain your solution, your value prop. And lastly, we're on to the call to action. And we want to optimize for replies with our call to action by using an interest-based CTA and not one that asks for time. So for example, you could say, would you be open to learning more? Or if it's interesting, can I send over some more info? You want to keep it short, direct, and make it the last sentence of your email. Now let's create the bump emails we talked about earlier. Bumps are emails that reply to a thread to bump the email back to the top of the inbox. We'll use several of these throughout our sequence. Now, the reasoning behind them is that if we took time to write a good personalized value email, we want to give that email an extra chance or two at being seen before moving on to the next one. Bumps are usually short emails that support or add to the message of the value email. This is where you'll use those resources we gathered earlier. Here are some examples of bump emails that you can use. A quick video explaining what your product does. A snippet of a customer testimonial from one of your case studies. A screenshot of the results a customer saw from a case study of yours. I really like using images. It helps bring more life to your bump emails. A helpful blog article related to the problem you solve. Bonus points if you use an article that comes from a third party. This will actually make you a lot more credible and build more trust with the prospect. You can even use a meme or a GIF. I've done these before. You can use the referral bump, which is where you reply to the email and say, hey, would your colleague make more sense to reach out to? And lastly, you can use the just gave you a ring bump, which is where right after you make a phone call, you reply to that email and you say, hey, just gave you a ring at insert their mobile number. And now you have your value and bump emails. Let's jump into how you can use these to create your sequence outline. Now we have our sequence theme and email content created. It's time to create the sequence outline, which will include the total number of touch points, what types of touch points, and what days they'll occur on. Step 1, value email coupled with a phone call and a LinkedIn step, which can be a voice note, a message, a connection request, or engagement on their content. But don't worry, we'll talk more about LinkedIn steps later on. Step 2, a bump email. Again, couple this with a phone call and LinkedIn step. You'll notice a theme here. After every email we send, we always want to do at least 1 or 2 other touch points, whether that be phone or LinkedIn. And this will make it far more likely that the prospect notice us because they're getting multiple notifications at once. Step 3, another bump email with a LinkedIn or phone step. Step 4, this is the midpoint check-in. You'll want to see if the prospects are still engaging with your emails. If not, consider removing them and finding somebody else from that company to add in that sequence and replace them with. Step 5 is another value email. This time we're focusing on a new problem because it's a new value email. And again, we want to couple that with a LinkedIn or phone call step as well. Steps 6 and 7 are 2 more bump emails with, again, LinkedIn phone call steps. You'll start to notice this pattern here. And lastly, the final step is a check-in to determine whether or not you should continue pursuing that prospect or if you should stop reaching out. So for example, if they've opened all of your emails, but they still haven't responded, I would suggest continuing to pursue that prospect in like a nurture sequence. But if they're not really opening your emails, they haven't answered your phone calls, you probably want to remove that prospect and consider adding somebody else from that company. The amount of time in between your steps depends on the persona you sell to and how aggressive you want to be. So remember, we talked about this at the beginning of the course. I'm trying to get a yes or no as soon as possible. So I'm okay with being a little bit more aggressive. And so, for example, I found that when you sell to sales and marketing leaders, you can be a little bit more aggressive because they're used to getting cold emails. So for that reason, I like to have only 1 to 2 days in between my email steps. However, if I was selling to a persona like HR or maybe IT who isn't as used to getting cold emails, I might have only 3 to 7 days in between those steps. The goal here is to hit the prospect with 2 separate email threads focusing on 2 separate problems, while at the same time calling and messaging on LinkedIn whenever those emails go out. Now let's jump into how you can use trigger templates to make your value emails even more impactful and save time when personalizing. We all know personalizing emails can take way too long. Instead of going down rabbit holes trying to find something to personalize on, you can save time by looking for buying triggers. Buying triggers are observations you can make based on research that indicate your prospect might have a problem or is in the market for your solution. Common examples include recently changed jobs or got promoted, recent department headcount growth, hiring for the position you sell to, they're using a specific tech stack you integrate with, maybe they got recent funding, and there's lots more of them out there.
There's more.
The easiest way to find buying triggers that make sense for you is to look at the last 10 customers your company closed and dig into the notes and the call recordings to figure out why they bought in the first place. Oftentimes you'll find patterns there. Once you have your list of buying triggers, create a template for each one using the framework we talked about earlier. Line 1, context. Line 2, value prop. and line 3, call to action. For example, your context line will be the buying trigger that you found. So, hey prospect, notice you just got promoted, or hey prospect, notice you're hiring. Once you have all these templates together, personalizing emails will take far less time. All you'll have to do is open your prospect's LinkedIn, go down your list of buying triggers until you find one that matches, and then plug in that template, and it'll look completely personalized and relevant to that specific prospect. If you're a manager, this will help keep your reps from going down long rabbit holes looking for reasons to personalize. And we've covered a lot now on email, so let's talk about LinkedIn and phone call steps. Everyone knows a multi-channel approach gets the best results for your sequences. So let's talk about a few different LinkedIn and phone strategies you can use to do this. So for LinkedIn, my first step is always a blank connection request. If you sell to sales or marketing personas, I recommend doing this as well because they tend to want to expand their network anyway. So if you send a blank connection request, it'll do the trick and it'll save you some time. Now, if you sell to folks like HR or IT who maybe are not as active on LinkedIn, you may want to include a note, something like, hey prospect, sending over an email shortly and wanted to put a face to the name, has worked well for me. But your only goal is to get connected because once you're connected with them, you can start sending messages. But if you haven't connected, you don't have that ability yet. So once they've accepted my connection request, I like to send them a voice note rather than sending a standard text message. This helps me stand out. So here's the voice note script that I use. Hey prospect, thanks for connecting. Wanted to put a voice to the face and name. I'm talking to a lot of insert persona, and most are trying to solve insert problem. If it's relevant to you as well, I can send over some more resources. Either way, glad to be connected. So my only goal here is really just to put a face to the name, like I mentioned, send over a resource, and start the conversation. After that, my goal on LinkedIn is just to provide value and make them more familiar with me, so when I call and email, they're more likely to have a conversation. You can do things like liking and commenting on their recent activity to get their attention, or even viewing their profile because that'll give them a notification. For phone call steps, I like to do them either right before or right after an email sends out. And like we talked about earlier, the reason why I do this is because they're getting multiple notifications at once. But if they don't answer the phone, here's my go-to voicemail script. Hey prospect, sending over an email. The subject line is XYZ. I noticed whatever buying trigger it is that you found, and I thought this might be interesting to you. No need to call me back. Feel free to respond back to that email instead. I'll also send a message on LinkedIn to put a face to the name. Thanks. And so what I'm doing here is I'm pointing them to all the other channels that I'm reaching out to them on. And this is going to make it far more likely that they'll actually open that email and respond to me. So we're almost done. Now let's put all the pieces together. Here's a recap on what we've covered so far. The sequence philosophy, which is to get a yes or no as soon as possible, how to research and gather the resources you need to start creating your sequence, how to write value and bump emails, the sequence outline, including the number of steps and what type of steps, and the LinkedIn and phone call steps you should use as well. Keep in mind, creating an outbound sequence is not a set it and forget it type of thing. They require constant updating and A/B testing for two reasons. Messaging can get stale, so you have to adapt so that prospects are getting new and fresh emails all the time. And email providers like Google and Outlook will catch on if you use the same templates for too long. So I recommend coming back to them once every couple weeks and updating your email templates, changing up some of the formatting, and doing some A/B testing. I appreciate you going through this with me today. If you want more practical tips like this, check out my newsletter, the Practical Prospecting Newsletter, where I share tips like this every other Sunday to help you book more meetings.